Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 503. Hostage. Discovering a pirate who was worth 3,000 pounds aboard the ship in disguise, Klein immediately felt wary. He smiled to Denton and Donna, who were beside him, and said, "I've got a friend." He calmly walked towards the Vice Admiral Iceberg's fourth boatswain, locking his eyes on the other party. The smile on Blazing Danitz froze when he saw the young adventurer, with crazy blood flowing through his veins, slowly approach. He suddenly had a thought: run! Run as fast as you can. Do your best to escape. Even if I have to use beyonder powers and expose my identity, I have to flee immediately. In his eyes, the reserved and stern adventurer was a genuine monster draped in human skin. Just as Danitz was about to make his move, he suddenly calmed down because he remembered what happened last night. The adventurer hadn't attacked him and had allowed him to leave. That is to say, he doesn't necessarily have the hostile intention of hunting me down. He can be reasoned with to resolve this crisis. Directly running away would only lead to conflict. Thoughts ran through Blazing Danitz's mind. Relying on his rich experience, he forcefully controlled his legs and appeared to wait in place. Klein walked over, one step at a time, and smiled. "Good morning, we meet again." That gentle and courteous smile of his made Danitz shudder for some inexplicable reason. He pursed his lips and said, "Good morning." Klein maintained his persona, his expression turning cold. "What are you doing on the ship?" "Heading to the Rorstad archipelago." Blazing Danitz, who was also considered a famous pirate, answered honestly. "Why are you heading there?" Klein calmly asked. Danitz forced a smile and said, "Waiting for our captain's orders. Perhaps there will be a mission arranged for me. He's probably going to chase me off the ship. In any case, there's a potential risk to have a pirate board a ship." After he finished speaking, Danitz speculated about the possible developments. For him, this was considered a pretty good result. At most, he would waste a ticket. Klein fell silent, so silent that Danitz's hair stood on end. It was a full 5 or 6 seconds before he spoke again. "Which cabin do you live in?" "First class, room 312. Danitz raised the ticket in his hand to eye level. He didn't dare to look down for fear that the enemy would seize the opportunity to launch a surprise attack. Klein nodded indiscernibly. "Is there a servant room?" "Yes," Blazing Danitz subconsciously answered, but his heart was at a loss. He had no idea why the man was posing such a question at him. Then, he heard the man say to him in a flat tone like he was speaking to a subordinate, "You'll sleep there." "Ah? Where?" "I'll be sleeping in the servants' room." "Aren't you going to chase me off the ship?" Danitz was somewhat stunned as he blurted out, "Why?" Klein glanced at him and said one word in a faint voice. "Hostage." "Hostage?" "He's worried that I'm a planted agent on the ship, making it easier for the pirate fleet to plunder the White Agate, so he plans to use me as a hostage?" "That's reasonable. If it really is as he suspects, then it wouldn't stop the pirate fleet's attack even if I'm chased off the ship. It's better to hold me hostage to aid in the negotiations. Dog *T. I hate this kind of arrogant, cold person who doesn't say much. They always only say a word or two, or even just an utterance, leaving me to guess the rest. If I'm really not his match, then I wouldn't even mix with such company. Why did I previously think that his temper matched my tastes? I must have been mad." Danitz gritted his teeth as he thought. "Fine." He exhaled helplessly. "To your cabin." Klein maintained the perfect Gairman Sparrow persona. "Phew." Blazing Danitz carried his suitcase, reluctantly leading the monster draped in human skin to the cabin. They went to the upper deck and arrived at room 312. After opening the door, Klein took a quick look and found the place several times better than second class. The living room was about 30 square meters and was connected to a master bedroom and 3 servant rooms. It had a separate bathroom, a standard wardrobe, and a mahogany desk. Danitz put down his suitcase and glanced at the servant rooms. He suddenly thought of an important question. "Is the master bedroom going to be left empty just like that?" The moment he finished speaking, he already knew the answer. It's mine. Klein smiled in a gentlemanlike fashion. As expected, to watch over me. Danitz felt depressed. Klein paced on the carpet in the room and said while pointing to the door, "Come with me downstairs." "All right." Danitz was a little lost, unsure what the man was up to. The adventurer and famous pirate duo soon arrived at the second-class cabins and found Klein's original room. After opening the door, Klein didn't enter. He pointed inside and said to Danitz, "Tidy the things on the desk and put them in the suitcase." "What? Tidy things? You want me to help tidy things up?" Danitz was almost stunned. In a blink of an eye, he felt a surge of anger rush to the top of his head. "How can I, Blazing Danitz, Vice Admiral Iceberg's fourth bosun, a famous pirate with a bounty of 3,000 pounds, be driven like a servant? My dignity and my reputation won't allow me to accept such humiliation." Klein gave him a cold look when he saw that Blazing Danitz was standing motionless like a petrified statue. Danitz's body suddenly trembled. He took a deep breath and replied with a smile which looked worse than crying, "All right." Aggrieved, he bent over and entered the cabin that didn't have a very high ceiling, swiftly putting the items that were scattered outside into the suitcase. Without needing Klein to remind him, he placed the things in order, even more carefully than how he dealt with his own luggage. After doing all this, he carried the suitcase and followed Klein upstairs. Along the way, he always had the impulse to sneak attack the man's back, but in the end, he held back. After returning to room 312, Danitz clenched his teeth, swallowed his saliva, and said, "How should I address you?" "Gehrman Sparrow," Klein responded succinctly. "Gehrman Sparrow." Danitz ruminated over the name inwardly, swearing that he would definitely not forget what had happened today. He vowed to let the man before him have a taste of something similar in the future. "Captain will definitely help me," he thought with anticipation. For the sake of his persona, Klein didn't choose the reclining chair. Instead, he randomly chose a hard wooden chair to sit down on. He leaned back in his chair, his body slightly hunched as he clasped his hands together, and said to Blazing Danitz, "Tell me about the famous pirates you know of." "There are a lot of them," Danitz replied, feeling somewhat stumped. He stood where he was, afraid to move, like a servant. Klein slowly curled his lips up and said, "Do it in accordance with the bounties." With that, he pointed to the chair opposite him. "Have a seat." With a sigh of relief, Danitz hurriedly sat down. He suddenly felt that the man wasn't too bad. He was at least willing to give him a seat. Woo! The white agate sailed out into the open sea and moved at a speed of 13 knots until noon. Blazing Danitz, whose mouth was going dry from all the talk, was finally permitted to stop. He took his ticket and led Klein to the first-class dining restaurant. The restaurant was decorated elegantly, with violinists playing in the corner and barriers separating the tables to ensure the privacy of one's dining environment. After walking a few steps, Klein met Donna's family and Clevy's. They occupied a large table and were waiting for the waiter to serve the dishes. "Uncle Sparrow!" Because of their shared secret, the little boy, Denton, had changed the way he addressed him. Donna blinked, fully expressing her doubts. She clearly remembered that Uncle Sparrow lived in a second-class cabin and wasn't supposed to be in this restaurant. Klein waved his hand with a smile as a greeting, then he pointed at Danitz and said, "He's treating." "Is that so?" Donna sized up Danitz curiously, and they felt that the gentleman looked odd, especially his eyebrows, which looked extremely unnatural. Cleves put down his fork and knife, and, after 2 seconds of silence, he asked, "Your friend?" Klein chuckled and turned his head to Danitz. "What do you think the answer should be?" Danitz gritted his teeth, then he forced a smile. "Gehrman once saved me." "Yes, that's right. Otherwise, I might have already been killed by him for the sake of claiming the bounty." Danitz consoled himself. Cleves looked Danitz up and down a few times and said nothing more. Passing the Donna family, Klein found a table by the window. The waiter came with great enthusiasm and handed over the menu. Charcoal steak, red wine, foie gras, vegetable salad. Danitz scanned the menu and couldn't help but sigh. Ships that dock for resupplying every 2 to 3 days are better. There's plenty of fresh food. When you encounter a ship that floats on the sea for 1 to 2 weeks, you can only cycle between beer, cured meat, and various canned goods. It's so monotonous that it drives you crazy. However, the sea itself will also provide fresh food. Heh, but this requires one to have sufficient judgment. We had a sailor on our ship who once had a beautiful lobster, only to suffer diarrhea until his ass nearly. As a pirate, he had the habit of using vulgar language for descriptions, but after he looked at Gairman Sparrow's expression, he changed his vocabulary. Suffer diarrhea until his ass nearly fell off. I have reason to suspect that there were other factors. Although your captain is a woman, there should be very few women in the crew. Furthermore, with the sailors unable to get ashore for a long period of time, they must be thirsty. Klein silently lampooned, took the menu, and drew a line according to the price. All of these. All right. The waiter's expression didn't change at all. At that moment, Klein saw Captain Eland enter the dining room and pass by, so he simply greeted him. When he looked back, he saw that Blazing Danitz was already looking out the window, as if he was watching the scenery. The captain knows you? Klein asked in a tone close to a statement. Danitz let out a hollow chuckle. We fought his crew back when he was the boatswain of the Wilhelm V. Besides, I'm also considered quite a famous pirate. At this point, Danitz recalled his current situation and suddenly became depressed. Hence, he changed the topic. I've always wondered why just Eland would suddenly quit the Navy. By then, he was already an arbiter,